Great. Hello, everyone. So, yeah. So we're slightly different this week. Arran's back. Arran's back because we've moved the time a bit earlier to incorporate Australia. We've got Mark here from Pherotone Studios. Like Arran, Mark is one of the invitational contestants in this year's Great Guitar Build-Off. So that's basically why we got Mark on. But I'm sure a lot of you know his YouTube channel, Pherotone Studios. I'm very keen a bit later on, Mark, to ask you a bit about sort of the things you cover on that, but particularly I'm very aware that I think guitarists don't understand how guitars work and the potential that's there. And what I love about your channel is that. Nice.
Yeah.
Great. And we've got our normal people in the chat. So hello to everyone there. If you're watching after the event, you'll be able to see the live stream chat come up. We're going to ask you if you've got any questions in the chat, just try and put them maybe in bold so they stand out so we can see them as we go along. And if you're watching later and you've got questions, you can put them in the description, the thread below, the comments below, and we'll get back to you. I'm sure Mark will be hovering there every now and then. So Mark, can you tell us a bit about how you got involved with the Great Guitar Build-Off? We'll go straight into that.
Yeah, so I followed Crimson Guitars for years. And went down there and built a guitar. From a kit. Let me grab it. It's here.
Oh, cool.
So I did this from a kit. Well, I can't tell what's in shot, which is
I'll go for a wide
absolutely gorgeous. Oh, that's better.
Yeah.
I went down, did a kit build, but I was quite specific about it. And was chatting to a guy, Ricky, who ran it, and went down, built this. So I was there. I think I was there for 2 days, and I didn't want an oiled finish, so I went back and got it sprayed. And it was funny because I'm in a room full of people who've been there for like months, and I walk out after 2 days with this. A lot of people were like, "How did you do that?" I mean, basically, it's Lego. They'd done all the work, and I put it together. Kept in contact with them, and I was on the phone to Ben. I was like, "Do you want to do a collaboration at some point?" It was like, "I probably don't have." Well, I think you've spoken to Ben. He's never got time for anything because he's got 100 companies. But he said, "We'll do the invitational for you." So, yeah, this is the first time I've built that colourful one. I've never built a guitar completely from scratch. I just modify guitars. So, first guitar neck.
No. Is that how was the first guitar neck then? How was that experience?
Well, if I'm building it for me, I'm more like, it doesn't matter if it's not perfect. If something goes wrong, I'm like, it's character. I don't really care. I quite like a guitar. That's why I like used guitars. If it gets beaten up, it's got a story to tell. But because it's going to an auction, I thought the Crimson Guitar guys are going to be looking at this and going, oh, can he actually build? So I've got to take some actual time and get it perfect. So nothing's gone wrong, which I was astounded by. I think we're going to talk about this later, but the bit that made me panic is drilling for the truss rod, because I was like, I don't know how to find it. I don't know what size drill bit to use. I don't have a long enough drill bit. And I was like, is it going to chip out? Am I going to go through? I found it, and I bought when I went to visit them when I went on holiday recently, and bought a tiny gouge thing for making that truss rod hole wider if it went wrong. I thought, right, I've got the stuff here. I've got some nice vintage tools. I've got a lot of videos online from like you guys and Crimson I can watch. And it's gone all right. Nothing's gone wrong yet. It even works. Like wiring for me, normally it's second time lucky. It worked first time. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Mark just mentioned then, he suggested to us this idea of, are there things we dread when we're making a guitar? So we'll definitely come back to that later. So if anyone's got any thoughts in the chat about what you sort of find something that you want to avoid doing. We've talked before in previous podcasts about the fact that sometimes we just leave things to the side, which probably should be done earlier, but we just don't like doing.
Yeah, that truss rod access, I think every guitar I've built, I'll do it in a slightly different way just to kind of work out, what works best or what's the safest. Because, I think my Great Guitar Build-Off one, I actually did that last week on it, or weekend before. But this time I actually drilled it before I put the fretboard on, and so I could actually, see and get it through first. Because
that's an idea.
Yeah, because I've done a few where you're doing it after the fretboard's on, and you kind of think, well, if I go too deep, is it coming out the back? Or the first one I did, I kind of drilled too far and actually drilled into the the truss rod itself, but only superficial. I can still get an Allen key and all that in, but a few things like when you pull the drill bit out and there's little bits of metal shavings on it, you think,
yeah. So do you change the order you do things on each build? Because I've only built one neck, and I've watched a couple of videos of how to build a neck. Well, a lot of videos. So I wrote a list, and everyone does it in a different order. I'm like, I don't know what works for me because I've only done one neck.
Yeah, mine's it's probably getting closer, but the order. Yeah, it's pretty similar. But I kind of forget. Like I go back after. That's a good thing about doing YouTube videos. I actually go back and watch my own videos to work out what order I do something in.
I've done that for wiring.
Yeah. So like, my build off one at the moment, like Fender style necks. So I radiusing the fretboard, but then also using the spindle sander just to get the swoop, the transition in. And it's like, which order did I do that last time? So I've gone back to look at the last video. It's like, that's the way. But at the end of the day, it actually wouldn't matter which order I did those two jobs in. But it's kind of like, well, it worked all right last time, so I may as well do it the same this time.
I don't have a spindle sander, and I really definitely need one because I'm doing it with dodgy stuff at the moment.
Yep. Yeah, mine, that was something, early-ish purchase that I got, and that's probably the tool that I've used the most, just to save time. Like, you can obviously do stuff without it, but the time it saves is definitely worth it.
That'd probably be a good future episode, the order that you should probably buy things-ish.
Yep.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about tools that we find really important and really useful, but deciding which one to go for first. One problem is, Mark, that, as you said, everyone does things in different ways. So it's a bit like the great thing about watching YouTube, I find, is because people do it in different ways, you can, as Arran has, try out different processes and find the one that's right for you. And I'm sure there's certain builders out there, I know there's certain YouTube channels I watch more of because there's something about the way they work that I connect to more. But with the spindle sander, Chris from Franklin Guitars, previous guest, he bought a handheld spindle sander and he's mounted it upside down on his workbench.
Is that the one that goes in a drill?
It looks a bit more like a big drill. Triton do them. It looks like a big drill with a spindle sander on it. But the advantage of that is it's smaller. It takes up less space. So it may not be quite as good as a big sort of a workshop based one, but if you're a limited space and the cost is much cheaper, it's quite good. Like people mount their routers under their tables with a little hole.
I've been looking for one of those smaller spindle sanders. I think it'd be handy to have one that's like Triton do an oval shaped one. That looks like the goer. But trying to source one, it's been a couple of years, but I was trying to get a discount on Triton stuff through some friends, and they said no. So, okay.
Yeah. So you're saying that this is your first actual build, but you do a lot of customization and changes on guitars. What sort of things do you do there then?
Pretty much anything. I kind of like to start with a guitar that's not terrible, although that doesn't always get the best views. If you're starting with a guitar that is absolute rubbish, there's probably no point. But I think everyone's upped their game quite a lot recently. And I kind of think if your guitar has a good neck, you can pretty much do anything to it. Because if you get a guitar where the fret job is horrendous, I can do a fret job, but it's quite a big job. And in a YouTube, if you go, oh, you've got to take all the strings off and then do this, a lot could go wrong and people aren't going to do it. So that's why I like Chapman guitars. That's why I started with Chapmans, because I have a rolled fretboard and often stainless steel frets. I'm like, well, that's a good start. So I normally start with that. And I do all sorts of things. One of my favourite ones, in fact, that's what this has got. I put 2 single coils in a humbucker slot. So that it looks like I'll bring it over. It looks like a humbucker single coil telly, but these are just 3 Strat pickups. And the good thing about this is loads of people comment, why didn't you just get a humbucker? Because people don't know that they're different to a single coil. But because they're engaging in the YouTube video, it makes it do better. So I'm like, well, we'll do that again. Yeah. But then it's got a 5-way switch, so it hasn't got all the knobs on it. But it has a 5-way switch, so you've got the Strat positions. And now this one's going to be a bit weird because they're next to each other. But then I did like the Strat blend knob, but series parallel. So you can blend it in series or parallel. So have it sort of like a Strat and blend the middle in, or you can have it like a humbucker. So I was like, well, it's like a single coil humbucker, so it will sound bigger than a proper humbucker, probably more high end because of the pickup design. So a lot of my stuff is doing weird stuff with pickups. Like, there's one there. I put a Telecaster pickup in a Strat, and that also triggered a lot of people. But again, if they get triggered, you get more views. So, but yeah, I like this sort of thing. So it looks standard, and it will fit in a humbucker slot pretty much. But it does something cool, and it gives you another sound that you wouldn't normally have. Like, everyone's just going to get a Les Paul, a Strat, and a Telly. And I know there's other guitars, but in most people's world, the other guitars don't exist. So I'm like, right,
yeah, exactly.
How can we make it more interesting? So this is what I've done. Make it look standard, but it's weird.
So Bart in the chats just said that you inspired him to do the same with the humbucker on his guitar build-off community challenge. So.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, it's one of the chat when I did this in originally. Was it HSS? No, it's two humbuckers. It's such a good mod. I put 2 single coils in the neck, so it looks like it's HH, but it's HSS. In fact, it's HSH because I put a single coil size humbucker in the neck as well. I was like, well, we may have some different sounds as they're next to each other. And it just makes it so much more versatile, because if you're playing, so I do a lot of stuff, normally studio-wise, not as much band stuff anymore, but if you're playing and you've got a neck humbucker, it can often be too dark. So I like to try and get more of a single coil sound, but I like the look of a humbucker. So that's why this works well. Or putting P90s in an SG that started with humbuckers. That triggered people because they were like, why don't you just buy one with P90s in? I'm like, well, it's got the trapezoid inlays I like, and I want the guitar to look how I want, and it's not that much work. But
I think Mark, you're talking about the perfect balance for me, because my guitars are all about the looks, and obviously sound's important, but for a lot of people, when they're asking me to do a guitar, it's because they want it for like playing live or a photo shoot, not for studio work necessarily, or to hang on their wall. And you've definitely got that balance of it needs to look like you want it to, but it needs to have the sound you need.
Yeah, I think if you've got a guitar that's close to it, that's why I like to go, right, it's good, but it could be better. And I know there's always the argument, because I see it in every comment, like, why don't you just buy the higher, more expensive guitar? Well, if you start with Squire and start upgrading it, it'll easily be better than a Fender Player. I don't know if you've played one of those, but they're nice guitars. They're a good foundation, but the fret job is quite bad. And it's like, they've put a Fender on, I go, oh, we'll add 300 quid, but it's just a Squire with a Fender on it. I mean, the body's a bit thicker. They probably use the pickups are definitely better and more consistent, but you still have to do not a full fret job, but at least dress the fret ends. So that's why I'm like, look, if you've got a cheaper guitar like that started life as a Sire S3, and then 1 month you go, right, I'll change the pickups, and then the tuners the next month. You do it over time. It's not you just do it all. And you forget you can sell the stuff you took off of it. No one takes that into account. And then, I mean, that's got a nitrocellulose finish, because I love nitro. £300 guitar with a nitro finish. Why not?
Yeah. And now it's as you want it, or on the little road to being as you want it.
Oh, exactly. And that's is he called Ben from Marstronic? That's one of your friends, isn't he? Yeah, that's good.
I only met him through the treble maker.
So I love a treble bleed, especially for a humbucker. So treble bleed, so I'm going off on a massive tangent here. You roll the volume down. So, I mean, if you're going to play alone in your bedroom all the time, you're probably going to get the least benefit out of that. But you do lose some of the high end. And if you're in a band mix, everyone's like, well, turn the treble up on the amp. Well, it might sound all right, and then you need to fit in the mix. And if you're playing something, you're not going to turn around and start adjusting stuff. I want to be able to turn the treble down and not lose that. I want to not have to readjust my amp halfway through a song, because that looks really bad, rather than just rolling, the volume down. And the treble bleed means you don't lose that high end, and it's especially obvious with a humbucker. And he does a variable treble bleed, so you can change where that peak of treble is and how high. So it's like having active electronics, but it's not active. And he's got you can do it wireless or solder it in. So I've got it in that. I can't remember what else I've put in there, in loads of these guitars now.
But it's so cheap. And I've got to say, your demo of it, which came out maybe last week, your YouTube, was such a good demo of it, because it really showed the difference. Sometimes, when you're listening to demos on headphones or even on your TV of YouTube clips, you can't necessarily tell the subtle differences when people are doing things and changing pickups. But
especially
really
through YouTube, because it changes how it sounds. It doesn't quite sound the same. So I cut out all the faff, and I think, right, this is a geeky thing on a PCB. I'm not going to go into too much detail, otherwise everyone's gone. But just go, look, this is how it sounds before, lose the high end. This is how it sounds afterwards, high end's still there. Explain it and go into a bit of the geeky detail and sort of add a visual of that treble bump moving. Hopefully people are still watching at the end. It did all right. But I've used treble bleeds on almost every guitar, and I was just like, this is. So he reached out to me, and I was like, yeah, this is. I think it's got one in the GGBO, or it's about to, because I've got to take it all out because I forgot to shield it.
Oh yeah, forgetting to do things. Hey, look, as you say, we're going off on tangents. There's so much there that's interesting to talk about, but I just want to do just a little bit more on your great guitar build off. And as always, we're going to come back at the end, me and Arran, and just talk about what's happened this week in great guitar build off, because we always like to do a reflection of other people's builds. But you were talking about everyone has a Telly or Les Paul Strat. Why did you do that shape? What made you settle for the sort of Telly-esque shape?
I've got a bit of a plan. I was going to do probably a Telly for a few years, but do something outrageous. I've got some more and more outrageous ideas, and I know it's not very exciting. I would build a Les Paul all day, every day, but a bolt-on neck. If this goes wrong, I can put another one on. Whereas a Les Paul, I want it glued in. I don't want a bolt on a Les Paul. And a carved top, I do the carved top. So I get a circular saw and I set the blade to like 10 mil, and I do it by hand. The comments, it's worth doing it for the comments. But it looks good. It gives that, it's got the right shape curve. And if you know how to do, obviously I'm not going to stand so it's going to kick and hit me, but you're only taking off a tiny amount of material. So I wouldn't recommend it, but that's how, in fact, when you see the video of how I thickness this neck, circular saw, I was like, I'm not going to use a Shinto rasp for all of that material. So set a depth stop on the circular saw and just cut loads of lines, and then went diagonals, and then took the last bit off. But Telecaster, just because I didn't want to make it too difficult for my first full build. I want to be able to put on a new neck. I prefer a Teddy to a Strat. I don't know why, it just feels nicer. One of my favourite guitars is a pink Telecaster, but I wanted to do something fancy with electronics. Also, time's a massive problem. I've got like my desk's covered in about 100 projects with different people that are all sort of simultaneously happening, and there's piles of stuff I've been sent that I've got to look at and maybe do videos on. So it's like, right, how can I make it so I can do a lot? I mean, it doesn't look that good in this light, but this is a palette of timber. I stained every bit a different colour, because I wanted to see what all the crimson colours were like, because I've never seen them. But I wanted it to look like, I'm going to say like roofing tile batten. I don't know if you've seen a roof in the UK, but every bit of tile batten's got a different colour dye, so you know what its use is for. And I kind of want it to look like, if someone's found a load of building site materials and then they've left them on a beach for a year, and I've taken an axe to this and a blowtorch and hammered bits of chain and drill bits into it, and not stained them deliberately, so it looks like someone's put it to. I mean, the neck's flawless. There's the hardware. So I haven't really
touch that after doing all the hard work on your first one.
Yeah, so I haven't done anything. So you quite get off to get that with relic jobs. They don't bother doing the rest of it. But I was like, I don't want it to look relics. I want it to look like they've made it out of something old. And I've gone for a boring Telecaster, but I've gone for a really rounded edge, because there's a bass guitar that I've done. I'm making that's stunning, but I don't know when that video is going to be out. So there's too much going on. But I really liked. I got the biggest bullnose router bit, and I was like, that's a really nice feel. So instead of having like a square edge Telly, I went for a rounded one. I also like rear access. I like rear mounted pickups, but I didn't go for that, and I wasn't sure how it was going to work with the H. No, I suppose it's SSS. This is just 3 single coils. I just went for sort of basic. So I think it's nice. It looks fairly standard, just a bit colourful. It looks like it's been beaten up, but it's also new. That's a concentric pot, so you can blend it in. It's got a normal volume and tone. Extra big space here. I haven't put the switch tip on, just so you don't knock it when you adjust stuff. So it's sort of practical as well. But equally, it's fairly standard. And these pickups, these are from... so I'm friends with Andrew at Tone Rider, and I don't know if Ben at Marstronic is as well. Is it that website? There's someone who has quite a lot of links to Tone Rider. These vintage pickups, I was like, I couldn't believe. I've just done a video on these. These are about £80. They're vintage Strat set, and we shot it out against my favourite pickups, which are the Fender Fat 50s custom shot ones, £230, and these £80 sounded better. I was like, I can't. What can I swap them for? Because I want them in one of my guitars. I don't want to give these away, so I've got to try and find another set of these. And everything about this sounds great, especially with the humbucker mod. Yeah. It's probably the simplest build.
Yeah. Is that a telly bridge that it's in, and the single coils fit into that space?
Yeah, humbucker. So I've done it a couple of times. So I'm sort of, it will fit, but you've got to drill holes through it. So it's got an extra hole for the humbucker slot, but you just have to do a bit of a route below. In fact, I got the strat jig and just sort of flipped it over and made sure it fitted, which is a bit different, but I like the sound of strat pickups. And I wanted this. So, and the zebra thing was I did a short live stream the other day, and I was like, what color do we go for? Because Tone Rider sent me all the different pickup covers. And my friend phoned me afterwards, and as I was swapping it over, I was like, oh, we could have a zebra. That looks good. So lots of mistakes happen, and it just happens to look good. So, yeah, it's not as exciting as your builds. I've been looking at those going, well, it looks like I didn't try very hard. I've just put in a funny set of pickups, really. But
no, it's great. It looks different. I like things that look different. I saw, Arran, you just put up a video, or maybe it was a short of you working on the crimson stains as well. And testing.
And that kind of fits into what we dread in the building, because being said, all the stains, the wood I've got for the back, I really like it natural, and there's a fair chance that I will keep it natural. But since I've set all the stains, like, man, I've got to at least try them all out and see what they look like. So that's kind of one of those things that it does look. Some of them do look really good, and so the top's going to be black wood, so that'll be natural. So then it's the essentially the body. So that's that decision. It's like, if I stain it one color and don't like it, I could obviously sand it back and stain another one, try again. But if I stain it and I don't like it and want it natural, that's a lot of sanding back, especially in the end grain, to get rid of it altogether. Yeah. So it's kind of the decision of whether I stain it or not. That is.
You've got any offcuts to test it?
So I've got so I've done it. That's what I've done at the moment. So I've stained the offcuts, but committing to putting it on the actual body. So I think what I'm going to do, because I'll have the calves, sort of carve through the top. So like on the arm carve, you'll see the body. You'll see both from the top. So I think I'll sort of carve to a halfway, so some of the body's exposed, then stain that to see what it looks like from the top where I can see both. And then if then I'll carve all that away to where I want it. And then if I've liked how that looks, I'll stain it all. If I didn't like how it looked and prefer natural, I'll keep it natural. But they're the kind of the choices that you do something, and then almost with something like a stain, you're going to know pretty quick if you like it or not.
Well, I'd recommend
there's a lot of work to fix it.
If you've got any more offcuts, I would stain it black and then sand it back and then go the colour, because it brings out, like, this was complete accident.
Yep.
So I'd recommend going black, sanding that back, and then going the stain. It brings out all the detail a bit more. I mean, you don't have to, but try enough offcuts.
That's actually what I did in the piece that I had. But
okay.
Yeah, so the wood, so I did actually both. So, but the wood that I've got, it's Northern Silky Oak, which has got like a kind of a fleck through it. But the black, it's slightly open grain. So the black stain has basically just gone into the open grain. It hasn't actually coloured, the patterns.
Yeah, oak's quite dense, isn't it? It's really dense, but it is open, because I've made an oak guitar. Yep.
So it looks, it looks different than not doing a black sort of base coat, but it's certainly not like a flame maple kind of effect that you're going to get with the black or not. But it's one of those things that kind of I don't know. I keep going with, sometimes it's like, go for it. Just, it's going to look great with colour, and then it's like, just don't put it on. And I think since I know it's going to someone else, like if a bit like what you said before, if it's for me, it's like, look, if I do it and it looks good, but it's not what I was hoping for, then that's fine, because it's my guitar. But to go after someone else, it's like, oh man, I want to get it right. Don't want to put a colour on and then it looks, shit out.
It always looks worse afterwards, like, because until you lacquer it, it looks like it just doesn't pop, and you think, oh no. Yeah. So you kind of got to do it and then finish it. So to see what it will look. I know people use alcohol, but I feel that kind of dilutes the stain, so I use an offcut and then varnish it or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. A little bit to reassure you it's going to look great at the end.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I've definitely, Scott, who's obviously not here, his great guitar build has got an incredible stain on it, and he was saying last week that he doesn't understand why people don't put the black on first. And
is that the red one?
Yeah, it's purple. The one he's doing this year, it's sort of pinky purple in the middle, and it goes to purple on the edges.
Is it purple? I thought it was red. Yeah, it's a funny shape, but it looks like it's the nicest. It's quilted, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gorgeous guitar top that must have cost more than my car, because wood at the moment, especially quilted, it is amazing to look at. That piece of timber, especially in that color. He's nailed it. Yeah, just trying to find it now because it is. Oh yeah, it is purple.
And he had it looking good the first time round, but then it was what this when he put the clear on it, a bubble or something. So So to get it looking nice the first time round before you put finish on, and then have to sand it all back and start again. That's a big choice.
When you get a really wide quilt, I really want to do a quilted top, but I look at the price of it and you go, it doubles the price of a guitar for a really nice bit.
It's something we don't have sort of quilted maple over here. Like any quilted maple that we'd get would have to come from overseas. So then it kind of even adds more of a cost on to get it here.
Yeah, that's definitely we could talk for hours. I wouldn't mind getting someone on who's like a proper wood expert to go into the different types of wood and the pros and cons of them. But you're right, the cost. I was doing a quote for someone at the moment. It's not just the cost of the tops. It's as soon as you want it thick enough to carve it as well.
Yeah,
it just adds up.
Everything's 6 mil, isn't it? Or not thick enough for a carved top.
I'm still surprised how many people. We've talked about this before, how many people come to boutique builders or one-off builders and expect it to be the same cost as buying something off the shelf, even though the fact that we're getting the opportunity to pick the wood by hand, so you've got the exact bit of quilt that you like the most. It's it's shocking. And you're right, the cost is so high.
It's gone up so much. A few years ago, I was picking up guitar bodies for like 30 quid for a body blank. I mean, if you can find one for 30 quid now, it's got some serious defect. You can't find it's gone double, triple. And I've got loads of friends who are carpenters. It's probably going to come down, because I'm not going to go into economics, but I think it will come down as no one can afford anything anymore. But the price of, especially any nice bit of timber, I want a bit of quilted sapele, but I don't want to have to remortgage to buy a bit of wood.
Yeah, exactly. If you're after cheap bodies, I've discovered recently that so I used to buy guitars secondhand on eBay to do up and just to experiment on. But often, if you're buying something secondhand, it can be so much work to work on that it's not worth it. But sometimes I do get them just so I can strip the bodies and use the bodies. But I've been buying some cheap guitars from places like Gear for Music and places like that, just to use the body to experiment on. Because sometimes it's as cheap as buying a body blank.
You're not wrong. And with necks, I'd recommend that over buying. It's cheaper to buy the equivalent of a Squire, like a Harley Benton, for 80 quid. And then you get a body and a neck for 80 quid. Yeah. Just buy it in a colour you want.
Absolutely. And some of the hardware is totally usable as well on it. So this might be a good point to get on to. Well, I haven't really. We've been mentioning your YouTube channel, or you've mentioned it, and we've been alluding to it, and the fact that you do things like with these upgrades and stuff. But can you tell us a bit more about your YouTube channel and how you started that? Because it looks like it's been going like 5 or 6 years.
I think it's 7 or 8 now. Yeah.
Oh, really? All right. Okay.
I mean, it was. I started filming for YouTube a lot longer ago than that, and just never bothered uploading anything. And first few guitars I made, firewood. I made a few awful guitars, just never uploaded anything. And then it came to, I thought, all right, my band's got quite a lot of songs. It'd be good to record some versions and upload those. So I did that for a few weeks. And then I thought, I'm going to run out of songs very quickly. Like, it doesn't matter if I've written a ton of songs. If I've written 100, it's a limited amount of material. So I started doing covers, then got copyright strikes. I was like, right, we need to do other stuff. So I just started filming anything I was doing in the studio. And the studio is in my garden. So I was like, okay, right. One of the first things that did well was my desk is, I bought an old Mackie mixing desk, old analog thing. In fact, I had 2, and because I wanted some spares for it. And I found another one, a school ceiling had water damage and collapsed onto an old mixing desk. So I got it for 50 quid off like Gumtree or something, which is, I don't know if it's like Craigslist or anything like that. It's a bit of a rubbish online thing for buying stuff. So I bought a mixing desk, mounted that in my desk and put a sheet of glass over it, did a video of that, taking an angle grinder to it, That got quite a few thousand views. People going, I mean, one of the comments made me laugh. They're like, I might buy a Ming vase and smash it up. I was like, it's a £50 desk. I was like, this is just a big mixing desk. Like, it didn't have a power supply. To get a power supply made, hundreds of pounds, and you can buy them used for about £200. It sort of gives you some insights into, if you annoy people a bit. I'm not doing it deliberately. I just do stuff and people get annoyed. Yeah, modding stuff. I try not to do any of my music because no one watches it. But anything, I was doing comparing microphones and be like, what can I do that will help people? Or what am I doing anyway where I can help people? And one of my initial things was I used to have 2 Strats. One was American and one was a Japanese one. And they sounded very different. So I put the same pickups in both. They still sounded different. And this is where I started. I mean, this is years ago because I'm old. Like, people before the internet used to talk in pubs and go, you go to an open mic and they go, oh, it's because one's got a rosewood fretboard and one's got a maple fretboard. Of course, I go, well, I'm going to change that and test that theory. And it didn't change the sound at all. So I started doing tone series on my channel. Right, what can we change? Does tone wood make a difference? What is it that makes a difference? I mean, it's pretty much your pickups. So it's kind of all over the place, to be honest. But random mods, random tone tests. Although, I don't know if you've seen any of Jim Lill's videos.
I don't know Jim Lill.
No, I don't know that one.
Oh, he's basically done what I've done, but 10 times better. So it's a bit disappointing, but his videos are fantastic. Just working out, right, where does tone come from in a guitar? Go, right. So I've made a neck that had half nickel frets down one side and half stainless steel the other, thinking, well, people are saying stainless is far brighter. It's not. It's exactly the same. So I think it's what you see makes you think it's brighter. Different nuts, like guitar nuts, make a difference. And so I did a video on guitar nuts, which is just still doing quite well. And that definitely makes a difference. But my comment in that was, my point was, well, it's fine until you fret it and then it's taken out of the equation. I know people are like, oh, it's still in the ecosystem. I'm like, no, it diminishes the returns on that so much that if you can hear it, you're probably a dolphin or a bat, because it's not in the realms of human hearing. But bridge saddles, bits like that makes a bit of a difference. It's just nice to know what makes a difference, because in the forums, people talk rubbish. So just going through thinking, right, is that true? Because if it is true, I'll do it to all my guitars. If it's not true...
Yeah, it's like conspiracy theories. You can demonstrate that these things make a difference or don't make a difference, and people still won't accept it.
Oh, completely.
And I've said it a few times before, most people haven't played lots of guitars. If you work in a shop, you've played lots of guitars, you can feel the difference. Maybe if you play full time, like I did some work recently for a professional bass player, or semi-professional, and he can tell the difference between really subtle things in how the fretboard's finished that most people wouldn't notice. But it's so subtle, a lot of the things. But
you're definitely right about that, the levels of it, because some people... I'll do a video where there's a night and day difference and some people can't hear a difference. And I think I've listened to it on a phone and even then it's audible. Yeah. I think I was saying this to Rob, so I was talking to Chappers, I was like, some people just comment absolute rubbish. And he said, what you find is most people are an average guitarist that thinks they're semi-pro. So they talk as if they are. But the problem is a lot of them, and the same as Pete. So he's like, a lot of people cannot hear the difference until you've played enough guitars, like you say, to be able to hear or feel or see that difference. It's just not in your reps. It's kind of as your exposure to instruments and different things expands, so does your hearing with it and your feel. So I do think a lot of people just can't hear it, and that's fair enough. If you can't hear it, who cares? Don't waste your money. But people can hear it, especially if you're a gigging musician or you want to go to a studio and your guitar won't do what you want it to do. You think, why doesn't it do that? Well, I want to know why it doesn't do that and fix it. So when I go to the studio, I can pick up any guitar and go, oh, there we go. It sounds how I want it to sound. Not, why is it so dark? We can't use this guitar on a track.
Yeah.
Can I ask, Mark, with like those kind of things, the sound that you'll hear like in the room in front of you from the amp when you're playing it, you'll hear those things, but then to record that, to be able to you show it head on YouTube, like how do you get your head around getting
it's a nightmare.
To hear what you're hearing in the room?
So there's sort of two sides to that. There's the point that if I'm doing it in the room, I swap guitar, and there's 10 seconds, and I've got to remember what that sound sounded like. So there's a longer gap for me. But sometimes it's really obvious. But sometimes I'm in the room hearing it, and then obviously you don't have an SM57 on a cab that I made in the same shape room as me, in front of the same speaker of the same age, because they're different over time, through the same amp, you know, and all the rest of it. And then it goes through YouTube's compression, and then you're listening through a phone at a bus stop in the rain.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So there's definitely that argument, but it definitely sounds different or not as obvious. And I've noticed a few things with this. So as I'm editing it, I can still hear the difference because I like to double check that it's not complete rubbish.
Yeah.
But there have been times when it's a lot less obvious, and watching the same video at different times. Now, I know YouTube does it, and some of the streaming services, they change the level of compression depending on your connection. And I think as those sound waves get less detailed, the nuances are lost. So if you've got a bad connection, or your phone's clicked off the Wi-Fi and it's going on to the just, you know, 5G or 4G or 3G, if that's still around, I think if your connection isn't brilliant, you might not hear it as much. It's in every case, it's almost still obvious, but I have had times where I've listened to one of my videos and gone, that's weird, why can't I hear the difference this time? And then the next time I can definitely hear it, and I'm thinking, I'm in my house. Why? I'm on the Wi-Fi. And YouTube's compression doesn't help, but I don't know. It's really, really difficult. We did one where we swapped all the magnets in little tubes on the wall to keep them apart. Different magnets on the back of a pickup. Yep. I think in the room it was really obvious. In the video, it really wasn't.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I saw Tim Sway do something once, and it may not be at all applicable for hearing the tone or the sound, but in his video, he was trying out different tone woods, and as well as him describing the difference he could hear in the room, he also had the visual of the sound wave on the screen.
I like that.
So you could visually see that there was some sort of difference, or some sort of difference on the sustain, or actually, as it turned out, no difference on how long things were sustained.
Yeah, I've done that. I find a lot of people, if you don't use recording studio equipment, you might not understand what that shows.
Yeah, that's true.
But also, if you can see it and it's, you know, subtle, is it influencing what you hear? Is it a bit of a placebo? Because the whole signal might be a little bit, because if it's not volume matched, whatever's louder you think's better. Yeah. So you're like, well, how do I volume match it? Because you can't compress it, because the minute you start compressing it, you've got to leave enough headroom so it doesn't do that. But I've seen a few of those. I did see I don't know who did the video where he made a guitar and it had like the center bit, and he not 3D printed, but used the CNC machine to sort of put a different shaped guitar body on each one, and did the recordings, and it was almost inaudible. It's difficult because everyone does a different experiment that sort of shows it one. I don't think tone makes a difference, and I know that Music is Wind did a hilarious video once. He was saying that it does, and his reason for it is because Paul Reed Smith, who's made a couple of guitars, did a video where there's all these people. It was like like a load of flat earthers or something. It looked like a weird rally. But his point was he got two bits of wood and tapped them both, and they made different sounds. I was like, that doesn't prove that an electric guitar, which a magnet that senses the movement of a metal string and moves electrons in a coil, no one plays a guitar by tapping different shape bits. That proves nothing. And that was his argument for it. And I was like, well, scientifically, we can disregard that because it's rubbish. I'm saying Paul Reed Smith's wrong, so.
Yeah, I mentioned last week I was listening to Scott Bass Lessons podcast, he had a group of bass luthiers together, and they were all convinced tone wood makes a massive difference.
On bass? I think it's even less obvious on bass. I'm a bassist.
What's interesting is the more they talked about it, the less it seemed obvious that it made a difference. So some of them were saying that they've made the same guitar for years and they've made it out of different woods, but everything else about it is the same, and you can hear the difference. But then they say
different amounts of coil. The pickup winders used to just, go to the toilet and come back and be like, oh, that looks done. The pickups are a different spec every time. The wood makes no difference. I
agree, because then they went on to say how little difference it makes once you take into account all the other things. So even if you do believe it makes a difference, they're saying it's quite minor compared to all of the electronics and outboard and.
Yeah, and then by the time someone in a pub gig is listening to you at midnight when there's 3 guitars on stage and amps feeding back, then I think the wood the guitar's made out of isn't going to have much of an impact on any of that.
It makes no difference. I even thought the tolerance of parts. Like I was building up to do a video where I'd put a 250k pot and a 500k pot. Because if you've got a 500k pot and it's got a 10% tolerance, well, in 2 of identical guitars, you can have a 450 and a 550. That's quite a big difference. Well, I've got a guitar there that I made for quick changing pickups, and it's got a switch, because I was like, well, what if I'm using a humbucker or a single coil? So I've got a switch to go from a 250 to a 500K, and I've used I can't remember what it's called, one of those meters to check. So it's bang on 250 and bang on 500.
Multimeter. Yeah.
Or a couple off, because it changes on heat as well. It really doesn't make much difference between 250 and 500. And I was like, oh, that's one of my arguments for what could make a difference. So, I mean, the tone capacitor maybe, but I think that's even less likely if you've got the tone on full. I don't know.
The guitar that I just finished the commission for someone had a humbucker and single coil. So I'm like, well, we're going to put 250K pots of 500.
500 and a resistor.
Well, that's I put 500 and then I got the resistors to put in. But when I soldered it all up and played it before putting that in, I didn't notice, like, it sounded fine the way it was. So it's like, I can't hear that, one sounds, the humbucker or the single coil sounds better or worse. Yeah.
Had exactly the same thing. I took the resistors out. I was like, what's the point?
Yeah, I didn't put it in because it was kind of, and I researched it for ages, like, hey, I'll get it right. Put the 500Ks in, the single coil sounded great. Switched to the humbucker, there was no obvious difference in tone, between the two. So it's like, oh, well, I'm going to leave it.
Especially because it'd be the single coil in the neck probably, and the humbucker in the bridge. So if you do roll the tone off, you'd probably want a bit less tone. If you don't want less tone on the neck and you go to the bridge, it's brighter anyway. And that's a humbucker, so you can get less high end. But I don't, to move a tone knob is not that difficult.
No,
well, people don't like adjusting the knobs on their guitars. It's like everything has to be on full.
Yeah. When I first got into playing, I wanted as many different controls on my guitar as I could have. That meant I could just press a button instead of turning a dial, because I hated the idea of turning it and not being exactly in the right place. But then I only ever played in my room, and as soon as I started playing with other people, it doesn't. The sound you have in your room is not the sound you need when you're playing with other instruments.
Yeah, it's irrelevant. Like, we've done videos where people are like, I prefer, because I don't like brass parts on a pickup because I think it ruins it. And people are like, I like that tone. I'm like, you won't. As soon as you go to a gig and you can't hear yourself, or you're in a mix and the producer says, well, if you've got a producer, anyone with any sense would go, that guitar is not coming through. The reason is because it's got all the high ends lost because rubbish parts. So... yeah.
Can I do some quick questions for you, Mark? What's the first thing you would suggest someone did if they were going to make an adjustment or an upgrade or a change on their guitar to make? Obviously, taste makes a difference here, but to make it better.
Tuners. I'd go to tuners, and I know it doesn't adjust the tone. It's not fun. It's not exciting. But if you've got crap tuners that keep going out of tune, that's the most boring mod. But I've got a video to release after Christmas when everyone gets their new guitar. I'm just going to show them how to change the tuners. And I found these sets of, I put a set of Geikers on that. I'd never used them before, like £22 off Amazon. I was like, when you buy cheap tuners around that price, they're generally not much better than the super cheap ones you get on cheap guitars. And they feel as good as the shallow locking ones or fender locking ones. I think they're the same thing, those two, on my Fender that I put on it. I was like, I can't feel the difference. They don't go out of tune. They feel good. They lock properly, and they're £20. I'd go tuners, cheap and easy, keeps it in tune, makes it feel nicer. Because if it feels nice, it feels more expensive.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that about the Geiker, because I've used them a few times, and I was surprised. Arran was saying a couple of weeks ago, I think it was you, Arran, about how... no, it was Chris from King Bespoke Creations, how he just uses Wilkinson pickups because he thinks... value for money, you get a great sound, and as we're all saying, once you put all your outboard stuff in,
anyway, I've got a range. Yeah, is it the S range, the high, or R range of Wilkinson? I mean, they're proper, like, bare knuckle. I'm going to say bare knuckle. I think they're a bit better than Seymour Duncan. No offense to Seymour Duncan,
but I also, as well as it staying in tune, I've noticed the difference between cheap pickups and more expensive pickups when you're just turning them. It just feels nicer. And anything that makes the thing you're using a lot feel better makes you feel like you're more confident that you've got something good there.
Definitely.
So tuners first. What about pickups? Do you think it should be changing pickups or changing components like the pots and things? I know we just sort of talked about that.
I changed the pots when they look cheap. For you to wear one out, especially as a beginner that doesn't move anything off full, it's never going to happen. It's only going to go wrong if you mistreat it and bang it into things and just not being careful. But pots take a lot of work to wear out. Even the small ones. I do it just because it looks better in a video, and I've got big bags of them that I've bought. I like the look of them, and it's easy to solder when there's more space. I've got big hands, so I'm like, right, I need more space. Pickups, yeah, I don't know if a beginner should change pickups themselves, but if you've got a guitar that doesn't sound right, it's probably, especially with humbuckers, it's more obvious than humbuckers, because to make a cheap humbucker, they use brass, and I did tone tests on that, and it's night and day. And what's funny is, because I wanted to know why some of my humbucker guitars just didn't sound good, and it was that. It solved it on all of them. So the cover makes the biggest difference. If that's nickel or nickel silver, because people get picky about me calling it just nickel, it will sound great. If you put brass over a humbucker, it's like putting your hand over your mouth. You lose. It sounds terrible. And the back plate, not as much, but it's definitely obvious. But I will take brass stuff off and replace it with nickel. Just take the pickup apart, which is not for the faint-hearted. But you guys will be fine. You've probably done it a few times. Just put a new back plate on, and it will just bring the pickup to life. A back plate's going to be maybe a tenner. Pickup cover, probably a tenner. Everything keeps going up, so I don't know. But for 20 quid per humbucker, with single coils, it's not as obvious because they're bright anyway. But with cheaper ones, I've taken pickups apart that are single coils, and they've used a humbucker bobbin with a plastic packer. This is going to get a bit geeky. Yeah. So a single coil is a lot taller, whereas a humbucker one is squat. And if those coils are closer to the magnets in the middle, you get more high end. So if you're using a squidgy little bobbin, well, that wine's going to start going outwards rather than sort of closing up. And again, with cheaper pickups, it's got plastic bits that the magnets go through, whereas in expensive ones, it pretty much goes against the magnet, or a bit of tape against the magnet, which is a lot thinner. And it's only sort of 0.5 mil each side, but it makes a difference. That's why, I like Tone Riders, because they use proper flat work on their single coils. So they're like a set of bare knuckles, but they cost 80 quid instead of, I don't know if a bare knuckle is £80 each. I was looking at buying one the other day just to match something I've already got. I mean, bare knuckles sound fantastic, but this set of pure vintage Tone Riders, I mean, I put Tone Riders in everything because they're properly made. I've tried a lot of these other cheap pickups and then gone, like Warman, no offense if Warman's watching, but tried those. And they don't sound very good. Brass.
Yeah, I think
I've been writing notes. No brass, Tone Rider, tick.
Yeah, brass sounds like I did. So just as a little tangent, I did a video on how to make summarizing tone. I was like, right, in your pickups you don't want brass; it makes it sound terrible. And I'm going, brass sounds like arse. Hilarious. We'll get it made into a t-shirt. And then my next thing is, when it comes to your nuts and saddles, brass sounds better. And this guy's going, but you're saying brass sounds but worse than better. And I'm like, yeah, but it's in completely different usages. Yeah. One's affecting a magnetic field, and one is to make the strings ring. So I don't know, brass, if the string touches it, if it doesn't touch it, avoid brass.
Interesting. It's great, I think, that you've said that you said early on, one of the things you wanted to do with your YouTube channel is help people. And it feels like all of your experiments are there to help people make decisions. Especially with pickups, because I was annoyed, again, forums, I'll try this brand. And it just came down to who's used the right parts. And I'm like, right, who used the right parts the cheapest? Tone Rider. I can't see anyone that does pickups of that quality they're double that price or triple. So that was my thing. And I just want to take everything apart and go, why doesn't it work? And even doing some of my pickup modifications, like I got a Chapman kit once, and I put a single coil in a P90 slot, a humbucker slot, but I mounted it to a humbucker base plate and used a humbucker size P90 cover over it, nickel, obviously. So it looked like a humbucker sized P90 in the neck, but it was actually a single coil underneath. I can't remember where I was going with this, but I like to do things like that. I'm like, right, I want the single coil sound, but I don't want it to be a single coil. And I take things apart and do it. But so I ask for advice from people like Bare Knuckle. I call up Bare Knuckle. To Ben from Bare Knuckle is really helpful. And he's got to the point where he's like, I know you're going to do it anyway, so I'm just going to tell you, rather than tell you not to do it, I'll tell you what, to give you some advice. Because I called up Crimson Guitars for one design of pickup, and then I went down there afterwards, and their pickup winding guy was like, I spoke to you
a few weeks ago, and I said, no, it's not possible. You can't do that. And then about a week later, I saw your video where you'd done it. I was like, I'm going to do it regardless of what you say. I just want to know what your advice would be. And you said it couldn't be done. I was like, oh, well, okay, I'll talk to the next one. Yeah, take it apart, work out what it is that makes a difference, because that's what it is. You get two guitars and you go, why doesn't this one sound right? Well, I want to know. And I want to show people what it is. And then if you can show them how to fix that, and then you get to the problem you said, half the people can't hear the difference. So you're like, okay.
So if you're helping all these people in this way, do you get like comments of people saying, I'm going to try these things out? Or are people just more dismissive and don't believe what you're saying?
I think a lot of the time, a lot of people, I think if you gain something from a video, no one really comments. A lot of people said, I'm going to try this, or this is exactly what I wanted. The two, again, the best one is two humbuckers and two single coils in a humbucker slot. And I keep going back to that video, but that one, it got like 750,000 views on TikTok. I don't know if you use TikTok, it's quite good. But I think TikTok pushed it because everyone's going, just buy a humbucker. Which shows that people don't know the difference between a single coil and, because my argument is, well, put a humbucker in everything and just split it. Like single coils would not exist if it solved a problem, but it doesn't. Yeah. It sounds, a split humbucker sounds nothing like, I say nothing like, if you can hear it, you can hear it. It just sounds like a weak, thin single coil when it's split. Whereas I want a single coil, especially in the neck. Yeah. And because from the top, that looks like a humbucker, but that is not a humbucker, and it will not sound like a humbucker. And even when I put it in, can't remember if it's series or parallel, so it's like a humbucker, that won't sound like a humbucker. That sound like a massive. That'd probably be a good video. I'll see how different that sounds to an actual humbucker. But I should probably do a video on it. But I have made some assumptions in videos that people just know what a humbucker sounds like and a single coil sounds like. And like the telly pickup I put in a Strat, the same thing. Like, why bother? Because some people really like a Strat. People are like, just buy a telly. I'm like, well, if you really like your Strat and you think the Strat bridge sounds crap, because quite often Strat bridge pickups don't sound that good, put a Telecaster pickup in it. The person that suggested that to me was Pete Honore. I imagine he's played more guitar than most people on the planet. I'm like, he can't be wrong. And I had the same thought anyway, but I was going to rear mount it. It was him that said you could do it in a Strat. I was like, that would be far easier. It's in a pick guard. Don't know why I tried to make things difficult. So, yeah, but people kicked off at that. They're like, well, we'll just get the Seymour Duncan. I can't remember what it's called. The problem is when you get into the realms of like a humbucker size P90, well, you can't fit the P90 coil in that slot. So it doesn't sound quite, it sounds a bit like it, but it doesn't sound like it. And I'm like, well, I want it to sound like it. Otherwise, what's the point? So I want a proper P90, a proper Telecaster pickup, a proper single coil. And if you're happy not having that sound and you're having, something halfway between, fill your boots. But I'm not. I want the proper thing, and I want to show people how to do it.
Obviously, then you have a lot of interaction with players, and you're talking about some things they don't necessarily understand, like the difference between an actual sound of a humbucker and a single coil. I don't know if, Arran, you think there's anything that is quite basic to the way a guitar is built that we know guitars players don't necessarily understand or think about? I mean, for me, I know that intonation is such an important thing, and I'm aware that how many guitarists don't understand that you can change the intonation, and that can make your guitar slightly better because it will stay in tune as you play up.
There's probably, I don't know, nothing jumps out maybe that I can think of right now, but probably like all the different pickup combinations, like that, the series parallel. So my telly, I put the 4-way switch in, so you can have the change.
Great mod.
That's amazing. And that, like at home, so it's a bit dark, just at home when I've sort of got in that mode. But as soon as if I'm playing in bands with guys that are playing humbuckers in Les Pauls, it's like, oh man, I need this. I need the beefier one just to to sound in. Otherwise, the telly sounds too thin. So
exactly,
like things like that. It's more getting the right sound for the right situation. And even so, my Les Paul's got the coil split in it. And at home, like I'll split it, and adjusting amps and pedals, I get it sounding really nice. It's like, oh man, this sounds great. And then I just push it in back to humbucker mode. It's like, oh man, the humbucker's way better than the split mode. So it's kind of
like, it's louder.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of things. Like you say, when you're in the live environment and you're like, oh right, I need to keep up with the Les Paul players, and I'm playing a telly, and you put it in position 2 or 3. I don't know which way you wire it, so that it goes like a humbucker. Yeah. And all of a sudden you can keep up, because the comments I get are like, well, just buy a Les Paul. I'm like, but you might just want to go everywhere with, like, I want to go everywhere with my pink telly, but I think that's got a 4-way switch. But if you're halfway through a song and you're like, I can't be heard, what do I do? Well, if you just move the switch one position, all of a sudden it's fine, you carry on. It's not easy than going, I better go to the shop and buy a Les Paul for $2,000.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Mark, look, I'm quite aware of time. We can keep going on that for a while, but you mentioned to us in advance, and I put it out on our Instagram, that you wanted to talk about the things we, as builders, we kind of dread about the building process. Yeah,
because you lot would have built a lot more guitars than me, and I'm scared of truss rods. But I was wondering, what stage do you get to and you're like, like, is there something you dread or put off? But if you put it off, well, you've still got to do it, and then you've done more of the guitar that you might ruin. So what are you scared? What are you scared of?
That's so true. The putting things off means that when the mistake happens, if it happens, you've got just more to fix. But I still do that. I still put things off. I don't know if anyone in the chat wants to add to it, and Arran, but there were things that I used to dread that I don't dread anymore, because once you do them enough times, you know what you're doing, or once you've experimented enough times. Like I always used to worry when I was drilling through holes in my guitar body for string through guitars that they weren't going to line up, or they were going to come out a bit wonky. But you know, it's hard. Once you've got there and you are, like, I've got a couple of jigs I use now and a slightly different process, and it's not so much of a problem. And I used to really worry about routing with tear outs and drilling through things and getting chips. But again, some of it's practice, but some of it is I've just upgraded my parts, my tools, and that I've noticed a lot of the time that makes a difference. Although saying that, Neil earlier in the chat said 3 years ago he watched you do some routing and bought the same cheap routing bits you used and still uses them. So yeah,
I still use them as well.
Yeah, so you've got to get, even cheap things can be the right things if you get the right ones.
If they stay sharp, it's all right with that sort of thing. With the drilling the through body holes, I'm guessing you use a pillar drill, because I don't own one, to keep it square, and a jig, because if you've got grain, it can move it the tiniest amount, no matter how you line it up. Brad point guessing. I tried that, but I don't have a pillar drill or a jig.
Yeah, but also I use I think it must be a Strat I've got, that's a Strat base plate from the bridge that's got the holes already cut in it. And I just position that on the back and I use that to line it up. So they're all perfectly lined up. And I do that on the front. And because I'm using a pillar drill, they do line up.
No way.
Just a way to make sure that it looks neat, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I pretty much use for that, you know, a lot of people use a hand drill even when they've got the pillar drill, but I have the opinion that if I want something to be drilled at right angle, I'm using the pillar drill, you know, regardless, because I know it's going to be right. And I think, so for, you know, drilling the holes through, you drill from both sides, so like drill the outer two all the way through, and then you can flip it, and then drill, you know, put your marks on both sides where they need to be, and then you can sort of drill from both sides and meet in the middle. So any discrepancy will be like in the middle of the body, with the hole will be out of alignment a little bit, but no one's ever going to see it in the body. So from each side, it's going to look nice and straight.
Do that.
But it's because my first one that I did, it was terrible, and then I've kind of tried it a little bit different each time.
Yeah, I should have done that on my GGBO, but I was like, I have no pillar drill. I've just got to drill through. And I did that, measured it the other side, and it's a bit wonky, especially with pallet wood.
The thing is, until you know a technique of how to do something, or until you've done it and done it wrong, you don't know that you even need to know a different technique or that it might go wrong. Oh,
yeah. You need to mess a few things up. Yeah. That's why it's good to buy, you know, a load of Harley Bentons for 50 quid or whatever, and ruin them. Or, well, try and mod them, but you will ruin them.
And as Scott always says, have a slightly lower expectation. Don't expect your first thing to be perfect, because it never will be. Hey, before I tell you any more of because I actually have some dreads now, which are totally different to what I used to have. I'll read out some of the ones in the stream. And we've got sanding from BB Guitars.
Sanding. Well, sanding's boring. That's probably why.
Yeah, I mean, there are. I know you mentioned this to me, Mark, in a conversation we were having a couple of days ago. But for things that are really boring, like sanding, I watch a lot of Netflix while it's on, and especially things that you don't have to concentrate on too much. So I can look. I don't want to look at the screen and then sand something flat. But there's some things that are just so repetitive that it's a good time to zone into a podcast or something.
I'm the same. I leave my phone's in shot in loads of videos. I listen to a little Spark Go amp half the time rather than headphones, and just have that, YouTube blaring at me while I'm doing something, even routing. Got to pay attention.
Well, I like watching other people build stuff. Makes me feel good. Curtis from Goth Rider Creations said cutting fret slots and putting the frets in. And that there are certain things that definitely have a learning curve that are quite exponential. So once you've got better at it, you get really good quickly, I think.
So the fret slots, if you've got I've got quite a good jig, I kind of feel safe with that. If you set the jig up, because it keeps it square, and you can set the depth on that, and that keeps the scale length. Unless you're going a weird scale length and you're marking it by hand, I'm not going to do that.
My first couple were, sort of cut by hand measuring, but I've got the blade on the table saw, so I just bought a cheap table saw and a good blade for it, and cutting fret slots is a no-brainer for me, which is really good.
Do you use the notchy thing to move it along?
Yeah, yep.
Just Chicken Bone John in the UK. You can buy it with Gibson and Fender scale length, super cheap.
Yep. Yeah.
So I've actually UK.
So Chicken Bone John, he makes some guitar making bits. It's really good price. No offense to Crimson Guitars, your stuff's lovely, but I was like, I can't buy two of those at like 50 quid each. I'd rather buy one for half the price. It's got both on.
I've seen some great jigs now becoming available that are 3D printed. It seems to be a great way forward, I think.
Hopefully they're strong enough not to flex, because that's the thing. If there's any tiny movement, especially with fret slots, I'd be terrified.
That's the point. No, it's one of the one I. Oh, yeah, interesting. I don't know enough about 3D printing to know the materials and how strong you can create it. But one of them was a fret radiusing jig that seemed really smart.
I've seen those. They do look good. Yeah, fret radius. I think you can. It doesn't matter as much on a fret radius. You can probably pull it back on the frets anyway if it goes a little bit off.
Yeah, I saw Bo Hanneman Guitars or have an Instagram post the other day where he had a guitar in to fix from a well-known company, but he didn't say the company. And as he went along the frets, you could clearly see that in the factory something had been set up wrong, and there was a fret in the wrong position, which I don't know how that got past quality control. It was pretty shocking. Corey from Saul Goode has said he starts making another guitar before he does the neck pocket. I definitely used to. And it's still a little issue with me. I hate putting the bridge in and finding out that I've marked the bridge in the wrong place and it needs to go back slightly or left or right slightly so that the strings are perfectly over the pickup poles. It always used to be slightly off when I first started out, and that's why I used to try and use bridges that had big base plates so I could move them around a little bit if I'd made a mistake and cover up my wrong drilled thing.
I do the neck pocket first.
I always do the neck pocket first, and when the neck's in, I know where the bridge is going to go. But for me, it's trem bridges. So my build off one, which I haven't got yet, is likely to have a trem in it, and another one I'm building for me. So it's that. At least if it's a hardtail bridge and you just drill in a couple of holes, that it's easy to fill a hole and move it if needed. But if you're drilling trem cavities and posts and things like that, if it's out of place, that's a whole heap of fixing you got to do to get it right again.
I've seen it on some Fenders as well. I've had to move because you can either move the bridge over or redo the neck pocket. And I've done that on a Jim Root Fender, and there's quite a lot of squires like it. I had to draw a new centre line, so the centre line was supposed to be this joint, and it's actually about 2 mil over because the neck pocket was slightly wonky, which I don't know how I did because I used a jig, a proper template and everything. So maybe that's not quite right. But I was like, do I bring that round or do I bring that round? But I don't want a big gap around the neck, so I'd rather bring the bridge over. So you don't want a wobbly neck because it will move out of alignment anyway. In fact, that's quite a nice neck pocket. It's just it's not quite in the middle. Just don't look at it.
I've definitely had a few guitars come in for repair that you just loosen the screws on the bolt and push the neck a bit and screw it back in, and it seems to fit. But then you just worry that over time it's going to fit.
Yeah, sometimes you can get it. Sometimes you might have to scrape a bit of paint off if they've got a bit of lacquer in there, just in the curvy bit. On Telecasters, it's harder because it's a square neck joint. Strats, you can get, especially if they've got that overhang over the 22 fret Strats, you've got a bit more hiding space. This has got an overhang just in case I messed it up. I was like, right, we'll have that extra bit so you can't see if the neck pocket's bad. It went all right, but I was like, right, we can hide something.
Yeah, it's good to know those little tips to conceal your problems. And that's why I make relic guitars, to cover up my mistakes. Actually, back to that sanding point, one of the things that always worries me is with certain finishes, when I'm sanding them back to kind of get them to real gloss finish, it's just wearing through the edges. Am I going to over sand at some point?
Especially nitro.
Yeah, I've been using a lot of nitro recently, and I've decided I'm going to put on more coats than I used to put on.
People don't get nitro. Sorry,
what was that?
Sorry, I was just saying that's one thing that I really dread, and I've done I've sprayed nitro just out of a can on a kit guitar, but everything else I've done is like wipe on poly or oil finishes. But I've got a mate who wants me to strip and refinish a guitar and like reroute for P90s instead of other pickups. So it's just I've kind of put it off a little bit because it's just that the inexperience of spraying lacquer and then knowing how much to sand it back and wet and dry sanding. And
I've got a couple of videos on that.
Okay, I'll be watching.
2 or 3 coats a day. Just drying times. Leave it for ages. Sand back, not much. Just get all the bubbles out. But when you're spraying, start and end not aimed at the guitar because otherwise you get blobs. So just, I don't stop spraying. I sort of start, pointing to the side and then do overlapping lines and then stop. Okay. Lots of coats.
I saw other ones that were saying that if it's like a metallic nitro, you shouldn't sand the colour coats. And
I did. I've got a candy apple red one there, and it looks. It's the most stunning finish I've ever done. I think the only problem I've ever had with nitro is it can go if it starts looking milky. The finish, it's got too much moisture in it, which happens if you spray in the UK and in the evening, especially this time of year. You couldn't spray. Just sand it back a tiny bit. When I say sand it back, 800 grit, wet and dry. Dry that off completely. You don't want moisture coming out of your bridge holes because moisture hides in places, and then whack another coat over it and the milkiness goes.
Okay.
I've had that a few times in England where I've left the guitar in the garden to dry and I've forgotten about it.
Sometimes with that milkiness, I used to find that if it happened and you saw it straight away, I'd go at it with a hairdryer and that heat would pull the moisture out.
I don't own a hairdryer.
What about for your luscious beard?
In fact, I've got a beard. If I grow my hair, I look like I'm about 12 years old. That's what I look like Chris Martin from. If I shaved my beard and grew my hair, you'd be like, it's Chris Martin. So hairdryer, a good shout actually. That's easier than doing another coat. But nitro's fine. You got to wait a while afterwards.
We're coming into good weather. It's in our spring now, so we've got nice weather. So I've just got to bite the bullet and do it.
Just got to leave time between coats and do it away from anything dusty. I'll do it while you're doing another project and just.
The thing I'm enjoying about nitro is the leaving it, because I end up having these guitars hung around waiting. And because quite often I'm quite impatient and I want to just get on with it and finish it. But there's something about seeing it around for a while and looking at it that makes you think about it a bit differently. And then sometimes I have other ideas of things that I might do a bit differently when I'm putting it together, or changes I might make to the hardware I was going to use because I've seen it hanging up for so long.
I've messed up a nitro finish. Let me grab it on a pink guitar. So this might happen for you because if it's too hot, it sort of goes almost like powder coated.
Yeah, okay.
That's beautiful.
But the powder coated finish, it's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be, flat. It feels amazing. So I was like, well, I'll keep that. And I try and wait for if I'm making it for me, I try and wait for a really hot day. So it goes, basically that spray dries a bit before it hits the body, I think. It's the nicest feeling finish I've ever done. So I try and do these mistakes.
Yeah,
because this was green. I resprayed it, so it's got 2 loads of nitro. I'm hoping it'll wear through to I like that when you wear through. So that guitar in the background, the gold one's sunburst underneath. But I wouldn't. If it goes powdery, check with your mate if it's your mate whose guitar it is. And go, do you like this? Because this is the nicest finish I've ever felt.
Yeah, okay. When you spray over the top, do you knock back the original paint much, or how do you do that?
So this was nitro. I mean, this is a body I made, so it was nitro beneath anyway.
Okay.
So I've also done a video nitro over poly.
Yep.
Because a lot of people said you couldn't do it, and I was like, okay. So I sanded one down completely, and I did another one where I just sanded it back a bit, and it was fine. I used primer, and then people are like, well, you don't have to use primer. I'm like, well, some people say you do. I'd rather use a can of primer and not have problems and not risk it.
Yeah.
You can go over poly as long as you key it up a bit. I'm not plugging my videos, but it's easy to see it, especially for someone that makes.
I'll definitely be going to search a few yours then before I commit to it.
Yes, so I get guitars sent to me to be relicked, and often they're not nitro finish, but they're poly. But I put a layer of nitro on top so I can do the checking on it.
Wear through. That's a good idea. Yeah.
So I like the idea though that you're getting this powder coated finish. And what started off as a mistake is something you now, because you've done it a few times, you know how to achieve that. So it's not really a mistake anymore. It's
two big mistakes.
The material and how to use it.
The other mistake, I did the neck pocket too low. So that 22 fret overhang is flush with the fretboard, not with the fretboard, the scratch plate. It should have a couple of mil gap, but I didn't check. I was like, right, well, that's probably how it should be. And because it's lower, it feels even nicer to play. Like, it's the nicest play. It's got a Fender neck because I didn't make this neck. But it's the nicest playing guitar, bar none. It's a pink Telecaster. I mean, it couldn't look more ridiculous. So that's why I've gone flush on this one, because I was like, well, I want it to be like that because it just feels all the mistakes worked out better. Now I try and make those mistakes. That becomes, I want the powdery finish and I want the lower neck. It just feels, to me, better. I mean, everyone that's played that loves that pink one. But yeah, you've got to make some mistakes. It's just, that's how you discover things.
Yeah. So I'll just go back to the dread, the mistake and the dreads. So my background is in art and art education. A lot of the times when I'm teaching people, I say you need to try things out and make mistakes. You learn from them and you use them. So this whole dreading something can be positive.
It's how I write songs. Loads of my songs, I've played one of probably my own songs wrong and gone, that sounds nice as a chord, and write a song around that. But the only way you do that is if you have to do it enough to be able to, go through that process of, if you make enough guitars, you'll make enough mistakes. And they might, you learn from those mistakes, how to correct it. That's how to become a professional. How do you recover from a mistake? But equally, some of those mistakes may lead to a whole new discovery.
Totally. So Ben, we were talking about earlier from Marstronic, said that he drilled straight through the back of his first guitar, going from the pickup route control to the cavity. And that's something Cade from Ravencroft put in his dread when he was mentioning it on Instagram. And just 2 days ago, I was drilling from actually it's for Ben's guitar that I'm working on. I drilled from one cavity to another, and I started really high in the cavity so that even if I was at too much of an angle, I was sure I was going to get through. And I still just caught the bottom of that cavity. So I was really close. I don't know what happened there.
You need longer. You just buy longer and longer drill bits to try and get the drill out. But I do the same. I drill from as high as possible to try and not do it.
Drilling is, for me, that's one of the jobs that I do dread and I get apprehensive about. But it's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like my guitar building superpower that actually it comes out like I get it right, and when I mean get it right, like often it'll be like right in the middle where I'm aiming for. And I'm just waiting for the day that I, do something and it just is completely wrong. But
you'll be hungover one day and you'll go through
it's one of those things that I really sort of dread, and I've never had a reason to worry. But yeah, I'm just waiting for the day that I'll relax too much and I'll just totally stuff it up.
Love it. I'm gonna have to go in a minute. I've got to put
sorry.
Back to work. But I love that dread of drilling, because I've done the same. I've had people watching me and gone, "Oh, you did a really good job with that drilling bit," and I'm like, I was shitting it.
Yeah.
It was luck that it went in the right place.
Well, look, Mark, thanks for being here. I'll put up some of the other dreads that people have got on here. I think there's clearly so much to chat about. One of the things I like about these podcasts is we end up thinking we're going to know what we're going to talk about, and it just spreads somewhere else.
Yeah, we'll have a chat in a couple of weeks. We're at a guitar show in a couple of weekends, so I'll see you there.
Yeah, definitely. And what I'm going to try to do is, we've got quite a few of these podcasts now, and I've leave the list to the link to the playlist below. But I think I might go over them and pull out sections from different ones and put them together. So we've got a few episodes that are all focused on a certain type of thing, and a few another thing. Because as you were saying to us, Mark, it could be quite a good resource to have.
Oh, it is. And you should make shorts. I mean, it's loads more editing, but, even a short, if you can explain something in 10 minutes and do a portrait one, whack it on, definitely TikTok as well, Instagram, Reels, YouTube Shorts. And then people could find a lot, because there's a lot of information from all the other ones of yours I've watched. Like when there's a few pro builders at once, it's a masterclass. So you want people, if they can get a load of info in a minute, they'll watch 20 of those minute-long things because there's just so much info. So, cut it up as many bits as you can and have like highlight things. It's definitely a binge watch because there's just too much information going around.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube is full of information, so you're right to pull things together to make it easy.
Yeah, but it's not this. It's not loads of build. I'm not a builder. I'm just a modder. So, but you guys, all the builders you've had on, it's so much information of people that have done it properly, rather than the forum of someone that's probably changed a set of tuners once and then like, oh yeah, I build guitars. You're like, oh, how do you?
Well, I'm glad you're so positive about it and so enthusiastic, and we can't wait to see your video. When do you think you're going to start putting up your Great Guitar Build-Off videos? I'm
going to do the backplate, film that at the weekend, probably edit the weekend or the one afterwards. I'm going to only do one video and it'll be 10 minutes. So try and keep it as short as possible. So it'll probably be a video and 2 or 3 reels. Because if you look on my Instagram, I have rows of 3, so it looks nice. Not because I've got OCD. I was like, I want it to look as pro as possible. So if I do more than 3 reels, I can't put them all up on Instagram. So a couple of weeks and there'll be just one 10-minute thing on YouTube.
Fantastic.
No, that'd be great.
Right, I don't even know how to leave this, but I'm going to have to go and start doing the
Well, thanks so much again for being here, Mark. And I look forward to meeting you in person at the guitar show in London.
I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Nice to meet both of you. I didn't even talk about your guitars. I wanted to talk about the Middle Earth guitar, but I'll see you again at some point.
Yeah, there'll be other opportunities. We'll definitely make time for another catch-up then.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Right.
I'll hide you, and then you can just shut your browser. And then
I don't know how to do it. Nice. I'll see you later.
Right, see you.
Yeah.
Oh, it's always nice having a different person on.
Yeah, no, that was really good.
I'm quite intrigued, or not intrigued, I'm quite excited by the fact that the invitationals to the Great Guitar Build-Off this year are quite diverse. Like guitar makers, people that like Mark have that channel that's all about how guitars work and making changes to it. And then Zaya, is her name Zaya, who's got the sort of engineering background?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I'm really interested in what she's going to build because, I think I've mentioned before, she's done a bass guitar before for one of her early videos. So, it's going to be really good. And I think we're getting to the stage that for the competition, a lot of people are finishing now. So, for even watching on Instagram, and there's none, I sort of have been too busy to, highlight and show a few. But I've really noticed that. There's quite a lot getting shared now by the Great Guitar Build-Off and people posting finished guitars. Yeah. And just sort of looking, at it as a general browse that all the ones that are finished and getting posted, look amazing. So I think that the quality is fantastic. So I think once we sort of get to the end and I sit down and watch, the final videos and final post, it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, they've made a real effort this month, I think, of doing the sharing. And I'll put some up on the screen in a minute.
Sure.
But it's clearly because it's coming to the end and there's lots of excitement happening.
It's getting closer than I'm feeling comfortable with at the moment.
I kind of feel glad I'm not part of it this year, but also disappointed because we've now. Tomorrow's the last day of term for schools here before the October break. And I was going to have, hopefully, some time with my daughter to paint a guitar up. And we were just going to do a community build of her sort of painting and putting guitars together. But we've got so many plans. It's not going to happen. The joys of trying to fit things in around kids and getting distracted. One day she'll be interested, I hope. Just quickly before we talk about Great Guitar Build-Off, I just saw a question here from The Pony Never Stops. I'm not sure your name, The Pony Never Stops, but welcome. About how easy it is to put a new fretboard on a neck. Annoyingly, like lots of things, I've filmed myself doing this a couple of times and haven't edited the video together. But my experience is taking a fretboard off and putting a new fretboard on, unless you've got a real reason to do that, you might as well make a new neck. That's what I think.
Something I've never done. So, and yeah, it's something that I wouldn't be looking for. I've watched videos of other people, steaming them off and applying heat to remove it. And yeah, I think it depends what the situation would be. If it's something, if I built a neck and realised that there was a mistake and I had to take the fretboard off, I think I'd be tempted to, almost sacrifice it or start again.
Yeah, I've just done it to put LEDs in the fretboard, and it's easy enough. It's not that hard. But it's quite time consuming. And actually, I've decided if I'm doing it again, unless it's on someone that's got a set neck, I'm going to just make a new neck and keep that neck aside. So I'm just trying to catch up on. There's so much chat happening.
I try to keep up with the comments, but I was too engrossed in the conversation to watch a lot of read a lot of the comments.
Cool. Right. Well, should I just quickly share my screen and I can show you a couple of things that I saw from the Great Guitar Build-Off this week. So Rob is getting really close, I think, to putting his guitar together, the parts that we've seen being built up. I didn't realise he's calling it the stiletto. I wonder if it's the stiletto because of all the metal bars going through it. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
I'm loving the look of this one. I don't think I'd seen it before in the build.
I don't think I've seen that one either, yeah.
It's got the sort of look of the slight ergonomics that Scott has in his, but it's got that clearly a headless guitar happening here. And I always find headless guitars so interesting to look at because they just look slightly wrong in some ways.
Yeah, no, that's interesting how the that's almost like the centre block sort of finishes at the pickup there.
Yeah. Is that a centre block or is it a scratch plate that he's screwed on?
True, yeah. It's too small on my screen to see, but it certainly, like looking at that, certainly gets your attention and you want to find out those things.
Yes, that's Matthias. And then we've got Curtis who's in the chat.
Yep. I
think Curtis is nearly finished as well. Such a metal-looking guitar. I love it. And then Jamie, we've been mentioning his build before. I think it's coming along so well. It's so interesting, the different sort of mix of finishes on it.
Yeah, I really like what he's sort of been doing. And he started his early in the process as well. But yeah, that's one of the ones that jumps out at me. I'll actually play that one and see that in person because it looks really interesting. And the combination of the flower patterns from the material and then the white as well. Yeah,
he's put a little bit of veneer here as well, walnut, I think that is.
Yeah.
To divide it. I like it. And that putting the hook in the end, I do that all the time now. It's really cool. Who else have we got that's nearly finished? Oh, there's some videos up, but I hadn't seen this. Oh, come on, stop. Here we go. Monkey House guitars with this kind of spacey finish. So yeah, like you were saying, there's lots of new things that just sort of appearing as people are getting towards the end. I think people are more up for sharing nearly finished images. Oh, here's Rob's with the brass pipes in. Yeah, I'm intrigued to see where that goes to finish.
All the photos that I've seen of that, everything looks really clean as well. So that's going to look great, I think, when it's all finished. And
then there's from Dave from 34 Guitars has got his finished.
Actually, I think that's one I saw I must have seen that one on Instagram. Yeah, that one caught my attention, just with the figuring in the wood and the shape.
It's very cool. I like the positions of the volume controls and the tone controls. That's something I'm becoming really interested in, how people position things at the moment, because I've noticed lots of different layouts. And, you know, I started that Luthier's lunch break last week that I've been putting up. And
I really enjoyed watching that. It was good fun.
Oh, thank you. One thing I'm hoping to get from it is ask different players each week what they like from how their guitar works. And it occurred to me that obviously people use their controls in different ways. People do volume swells and things like that. And some people just want them totally out of the way. And I'm just intrigued to think about that, especially when I'm working with a client, to make sure it's in the right place for them. And I've had more and more of those conversations really about exactly where to put the controls for them. Whereas before, maybe I just thought about put it where everyone puts it, as opposed to where it needs to be for the player.
Mm.
I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to mention from the build-off this year.
No, I think with it getting closer now and guitars being finished, and very conscious of what I need to do still to get done. So it's all manageable still, but it's kind of when something's over a long period of time and you think you got heaps of time, and then it gets close to the end. So I'm looking forward to catching up on some videos. Work and things are getting into a busy stage, so every moment of time is a bit precious at the moment. But no, I think it's been good that there's been a lot more activity on social media from Great Guitar Build-Off, on Instagram anyway. For the stuff that I've seen.
Facebook too.
That's good. And chatting to Mark now and seeing his, because I noticed his posts for the finished guitar a few days ago. We put those up. So it's really keen. Big. And the other Mark with his crazy guitar that he's done with the carbon fibre pipes on the neck, he's sort of coming along in leaps and bounds as well. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, that's looking really cool. I'm intrigued to see. What I like about him as well is his playing. So I'm intrigued to see him do a full playing video.
His demos are pretty impressive for his skills in playing as well as designing and building.
Great. Well, look, Arran, we probably won't see you for a few weeks because you're obviously very busy, especially with your guitar build-off. So maybe the next time we see you is with your finished video going live.
I hope so, yeah. Mine will probably be, where are we now? So as I sort of said before we started, the first couple of weeks of November is going to be crazy for me. So I'm kind of hoping in the next couple of weeks to get all the construction sort of done on the guitar, and then that 2 weeks when work's really busy, hopefully I'm up to the finishing. I'll certainly have the time to put a coat of oil or finish on the guitar each day, and then I'll have the last 2 weeks of November to assemble and make sure everything works. And mine will just be one video as well, sort of within that last week, hopefully not too close to the actual last day. But that's why I've been trying to put more photo or progress photos on Instagram and Reels. So probably over the next month I'll try to get a few more Instagram sort of videos and stuff up just to share where I'm up to at the moment.
Cool. I look forward to that. All right then, well, let's leave it there. That's been an hour and a half, hour and 29 minutes. Perfect. So good night, Arran, and good night, good afternoon, or whatever to everyone else. Good morning to some people, I think. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, take care. Bye.